Hurricanes. Introduction to hurricanes. A hurricane is a huge storm that can be more than 500 miles across and can have winds up to 200 miles per hour. A hurricane moves across the ocean at up to 20 miles per hour and usually lasts for about a week. In the northern hemisphere, hurricanes rotate in a counterclockwise direction, and in the southern hemisphere, they rotate in a clockwise direction. A hurricane causes significant damage when it hits land. It can knock over trees and destroy buildings and cars. How hurricanes form. The first thing that is needed to form a hurricane is ocean water that is warmer than 80 degrees Fahrenheit. This causes the salty water to evaporate, and this makes humid air and clouds. Winds above the water join and force air to move upward. Above the area where the storm is forming, winds move outward. This helps the air from below to rise. The rising, humid air makes storm clouds. Winds from outside the forming hurricane steer it and help it to grow. Where hurricanes form. Hurricanes form in the warm waters of the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean. They form in both the northern and the southern hemisphere. They do not form right at the equator because the Coriolis effect is needed to make hurricanes spin, and there is no Coriolis effect at the equator. The Coriolis effect is caused by the rotation of the Earth. It makes things, including wind, move to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere. When hurricanes form. Hurricanes form when the ocean water is warm. In the Atlantic Ocean, this can happen anytime between June and November. But most Atlantic hurricanes happen during the fall months. In the eastern Pacific Ocean area, the hurricane season begins around May 15. But for the central area of the Pacific Ocean, it begins around the start of June. Hurricanes happen between April and December in the Indian Ocean, with most occurring between May and November. Hurricanes, cyclones, typhoons, and tropical storms. Big storms go by different names in different parts of the world. In general, they are called tropical storms. In the Atlantic Ocean and the northeast Pacific Ocean near the U.S., a tropical storm is called a hurricane. In the northwest Pacific area near Asia, a tropical storm is called a typhoon. Tropical storms are called cyclones when they form in the South Pacific Ocean and in the Indian Ocean. A storm surge. One of the most dangerous things about a hurricane is when it hits the coastal areas, especially where there is a large population. The winds of a hurricane are very dangerous, but the water that accompanies the winds of a hurricane is also very destructive. Surge means the rising of the water. So a storm surge means that the wind from the storm makes the sea rise. When it hits the land, the storm surge causes flooding along the coast. This flooding can continue inland even if the strength of the hurricane winds decreases. Naming hurricanes. At first, hurricanes were named after letters of the alphabet, like A is for Hurricane Abel, B is for Hurricane Baker, and C is for Hurricane Charlie. Later, the U.S. Weather Bureau started to use women's names, like Hurricane Ann, Hurricane Betty, etc. Eventually, men's names were also used. Today, the World Meteorological Organization chooses names for hurricanes, usually depending on where in the world the hurricane is forming. If a hurricane is extremely destructive, that name is not used again. Measuring a hurricane. One way scientists measure a hurricane is by using a NASA spacecraft called TRMM. This stands for Tropical Rainfall Measuring Mission. The TRMM spacecraft orbits the Earth once every 91 minutes and gathers information about rainfall for a 24-hour period, during 16 orbits around the Earth. Rainfall information helps scientists to understand and to predict wind patterns and ocean currents. This helps them better understand hurricanes. Hurricane stages. Hurricanes can be mild or they can be extremely destructive and cause damage and loss of life. Scientists have come up with a list that describes different stages of a storm. A tropical wave is the mildest stage, followed by a tropical disturbance, which is a 24-hour thunderstorm. A tropical depression has winds up to 38 miles per hour, and a tropical storm or tropical cyclone has winds up to 73 miles per hour. A tropical storm with winds of over 74 miles per hour is often called a hurricane. The Saffir-Simpson Hurricane Scale. When the winds of a hurricane go above 74 miles per hour, scientists begin to use a measuring system called the Saffir-Simpson Hurricane Scale. A Category 1 hurricane has winds between 74 and 95 miles per hour and causes minimal damage. This is followed by Category 2, 96 to 100 miles per hour, moderate damage. Category 3, 111 to 130 miles per hour, extensive damage. And Category 4, 131 to 155 miles per hour, extreme damage. Category 5 is the highest, with winds greater than 155 miles per hour and catastrophic damage. Warnings. There are several different kinds of warnings that scientists use to tell us what kind of storm is heading in our direction. A tropical storm warning means that there will be winds between 39 and 74 miles per hour in the next 24 hours. A tropical storm watch is similar, but the storm will come in the next 36 hours. A hurricane warning means that the winds are over 74 miles per hour and will arrive in the next 24 hours. A hurricane watch means it will arrive in the next 36 hours. Safety tips. There are several things you can do to prepare for the arrival of a hurricane. The first thing is to make sure to have supplies ready. These include a first aid kit, a battery-operated radio, a flashlight, bottled water, and canned food, a non-electric can opener, and protective clothing. Stay indoors because of the strong winds. Sometimes it is necessary to turn off the water, gas, and electricity. If you are told by the police to evacuate, follow their orders. Interesting facts. The word hurricane comes from a Native American word, hurricane, which means evil spirit of the wind. Hurricanes form over tropical areas because warm water is needed to create a hurricane. Only hurricanes are given their own names. Other weather situations like tornadoes are not given names. The name of the first hurricane of the year usually starts with the letter A. Hurricanes use warm water to create energy, so they weaken when they move over land. Hurricanes cause damage from high wind, storm surges, and flooding. Fast-moving, powerful hurricanes cause wind damage, but slow-moving hurricanes can cause more damage through flooding because they produce more rain. Interesting facts. Hurricanes can dump up to a foot of rain on a land area. The weather inside the eye or the center of the storm is calm. The eye of a hurricane can be as small as 2 miles and as big as 200 miles across. Hurricane Katrina flooded 80% of the city of New Orleans when it struck in 2005. A large hurricane has the same amount of energy as 10 atomic bombs. There is a hurricane on the planet Jupiter that is as large as the entire Earth, and it has been happening for over 300 years.